There's a moment just before sunrise on Fremont Street when the lights are still on but the magic is worn thin. The neon hums like it's tired of pretending. Empty glasses sweat on forgotten tables. The drunks wander off. The dealers lean back in their chairs and rub their eyes like men who've been counting someone else's dreams all night. If you stand there long enough, you can almost hear the old city breathing beneath the new one. Before the corporations came with their spreadsheets and loyalty cards, before the carpets got thick enough to muffle a bad decision, Las Vegas had teeth. It was dusty and hot and carried itself like a border town that happened to stumble into electricity. And in those years, one man walked in wearing a cowboy hat and treated the whole place like a high-stakes poker table. His name was Binion. Some folks remember him as the founder of the World Series of Poker. Others remember the rumors out of Texas, whispered things about numbers rackets and a rival named Sam Murray who didn't live long enough to settle accounts. Depends on who's telling it and whether the bar is still open. What's certain is this: before Vegas went corporate, it went Binion. And he liked it that way. Now the hat and the neon came later. First there was Texas, and a boy who got bored easily and learned fast. Benny was born in rural Texas in 1904, sickly as a boy, sent home from school more than he attended it. Books didn't hold him long anyway. Dice did. His father ran a small horse trading operation and kept loose company. That's the polite way of saying the family's introduction to gambling wasn't theoretical, but practical. Cards on oil-stained tables. Men with hats low over their eyes. Money counted twice. By his 20s, Benny was knee-deep in the Texas gambling underground. Numbers games, policy racks, backroom action that didn't make it into newspapers unless somebody bled. Texas in those days didn't look kindly on organized gambling, at least not publicly. But prohibition has a funny way of sharpening a man's business instincts. Benny learned how to keep books quiet, how to make friends in unlikely offices, how to remember who owed what, and how long you could let them breathe before reminding them. There was also the matter of Sam Murray, a rival operator in Dallas. In 1947, Murray was found shot to death. Benny was charged and later acquitted. Acquitted doesn't mean the whispers stopped. In those days, such rumors traveled faster than court transcripts. They slipped into card rooms, into oil fields, into sheriff's offices. In Texas, a courtroom can close a case. It rarely closes a story. The heat got heavier after that. Investigations, political shifts, federal attention. You could feel the temperature rising around him, and Benny was too smart to wait until the walls were fully built. He didn't head west chasing a dream. No, Texas was getting too crowded for outlaws like Binion. Las Vegas, on the other hand, was wide open the way only a desert town can be. Nothing settled, everything possible. Money flowed in brown envelopes. Handshakes lasted longer than contracts. If you had nerve and backing, the city made space for you. When Benny arrived in Nevada in the late 1940s, Las Vegas still felt like a bet someone made against geography. A string of casinos glowing against sand and stubbornness. Mob influence was no secret. If anything, it was part of the sales pitch. High rollers flew in with suitcases that didn't fit under airplane seats. Benny arrived in 1948 and bought a small joint on Fremont Street, the El Dorado Club and the Apache Hotel. He stitched them together and gave the place a name that sounded like it belonged on a cattle brand, Binion's Horseshoe. He didn't try to outshine the Strip. He didn't need fountains or French facades. What he offered was something gamblers understood instinctively: limits, high ones. While other casinos capped bets to protect themselves from a bad run, Benny raised his ceilings. $10,000 a hand when that number still made bankers blink. If you wanted to wager big, he'd take it. Men like William Bergstrom, The phantom gambler, a legend of the felt that I've covered, would walk into Las Vegas carrying suitcases heavy enough to bend the handle, asking for limits that made lesser casinos sweat. The Horseshoe never blinked first. Binion had built a room for that kind of man, a place where the bet was never the problem, only the nerve behind it. And then there was the $1 million. A stack of crisp bills displayed behind thick glass in the casino. A full $1 million in cash, arranged so the public could see it with their own eyes. You could stand there and stare at it, proof that the house was solid, that your chips weren't backed by promises. It was marketing, sure, but it was also psychological warfare. Gamblers trusted what they could touch. Benny understood that. He understood them. He treated big bettors like visiting royalty. Steak dinners on the house, drinks without limit, a handshake at the door. He knew their names, their habits, their superstitions. He knew which ones wanted privacy and which ones wanted applause. A man could lose a fortune at the Horseshoe and still feel respected walking out. That was the trick. Give it a night or two, and the Horseshoe starts to tell you what sort of man was running it. Thick smoke hanging in the air. Cowboys with oil money sitting across from sharp-dressed road gamblers who carried their bankroll in worn leather bags. No television cameras, no velvet ropes, just nerve. Benny didn't hover. He observed. From behind the pit, from a quiet corner, hat tipped slightly back. If someone tried to cheat, he handled it personally. No theatrics, just a quiet escort to the door and a band that stuck. He forgave debt sometimes, too. If he believed in a man, he'd extend credit past what any sensible accountant would allow. Loyalty meant something to him. Reputation meant more. The Nevada Gaming Commission wasn't always comfortable with his style. Benny's roots weren't exactly sanitized, and regulators in a growing state wanted cleaner optics. He clashed with them more than once. Fines, scrutiny, warnings that felt less like guidance and more like negotiation. But as long as the Horseshoe printed money, and as long as the gamblers kept coming, Benny held his ground. Then he decided to do something that didn't make immediate financial sense at all. He gathered a handful of the best poker players in the country and invited them to settle a question. Who was the best? The invitation moved quietly through gambling circles. No posters, no fanfare, just a simple understanding. If you believed you were the best, you showed up. So they came in, men who'd spent their lives measuring each other in glances and handshakes, and they took seats, staring at one another the way gunmen used to. In 1970, inside a smoky room at Binion's Horseshoe, a group of road gamblers, Texas legends, and quiet killers of the felt sat down together. There were no sponsorship patches, no televised graphics, just men who had spent their lives chasing each other from game to game. That first year, they didn't even play a formal tournament the way we understand it now. They voted on who the best all-around player was. The winner was Johnny Moss, but he didn't celebrate much. He didn't have to. The room already knew what the vote meant. A hierarchy had been carved into smoke. That was the beginning of the World Series of Poker as we know it. It's almost hard to believe now. An empire of bracelets, television deals, global qualifiers, all tracing back to a room that smelled like bourbon and ambition. Benny saw something in poker that others hadn't fully monetized yet. Not just the rake, not just the spectacle. He saw mythology. Poker players are different from roulette bettors or slot players. They carry stories with them. They measure each other in whispers. Benny created a stage for those stories to harden into legend. Bracelets came later. Structure evolved, but the heartbeat stayed the same. Let the best play, let the rails sweat, let the world watch a man's composure crumble or crystallize under pressure. Many of you have been around poker long enough to know how intoxicating that is. The silence before an all-in. The way a room shifts when someone who never bluffs suddenly does. Binion gave poker a true throne. Now, the trouble with a town built on risk is that eventually somebody comes along and starts counting it. Accountants rarely admire legends. As they say, time has a way of turning outlaws into paperwork. By the 1980s, Las Vegas was changing. Corporate money flowed in. Wall Street suits began replacing the old guard. Regulation tightened. Background checks grew more thorough. Public image mattered. Binion's past, which had once been tolerated as colorful, now felt inconvenient. In 1989, after disputes involving tax issues and licensing concerns, the Nevada Gaming Commission forced him out of active control. His gaming license was revoked. The Horseshoe remained in family hands, but the era of Binion walking the floor as undisputed king was ending. It's a strange thing to watch a man outlive his own myth. Harder still when the myth keeps making money without you. He had built a place where gamblers felt understood. Now he sat on the sidelines while lawyers parsed balance sheets and regulators reviewed filings. His son, Ted Binion, would later become entangled in a saga of his own. Drugs, wealth, a sensational death that still fuels late-night documentaries. The Binion name never drifted quietly into obscurity. It lingered, complicated, and shadowed. But Binion himself passed away in 1989, not long after losing control of the casino he'd shaped with his bare hands. Vegas kept growing, but differently. You can argue about the scandals all night. The old-timers prefer talking about the way he ran a room. If you ask them what made Binion distinct, they won't hand you a spreadsheet. They'll tell you about the feeling. He believed in taking bets others feared. He believed that if a man walked in with money and nerve, you gave him a seat. He didn't hide behind low limits or politely suggest a smaller wager. He trusted that over time, the math would sort itself out. And if it didn't, well, he'd worry about that tomorrow. He banned cheaters without hesitation, yet he was known to forgive a losing gambler who looked him in the eye and promised to square up. He valued personal word over printed policy. Today's casinos run on algorithms, loyalty tiers, risk modeling software. They know how long you sit at a machine, how often you cash out, how likely you are to return. Binion ran his casino on instinct, on memory, on a handshake. There's something reckless about that, also something human. He wore that cowboy hat even in rooms where everyone else had traded theirs for tailored suits. He didn't try to sand down his edges for polite society. High rollers trusted him because they sensed he understood the dance. He knew what it meant to put real money on the line. He had done it himself long before he became the house. And that's the part people forget. He wasn't just one to host risk, he actually lived in it. Most casinos kept their strength hidden in back rooms. Binion put his where you could stare at it. That's why I keep coming back to that glass case with $1 million stacked inside. In the 1950s, $1 million felt like something you needed permission to even say out loud. It was a myth, a ranch, a skyline. Generations of security wrapped into one figure. And there it sat on Fremont Street, lit up for anyone with curiosity and enough courage to step inside. It said something without speaking. We're not afraid of big money here. Go ahead, try us. Of course, the house still had its edge. The odds were still the odds. But Binion made the edge feel like a duel rather than a machine. Gamblers don't always chase profit. Sometimes they chase acknowledgement. They want to be seen as worthy of the fight. At the Horseshoe, They were. By then, the city was already changing its clothes. Cleaner lines, brighter lights, fewer rough edges left showing. Men like Benny don't fit neatly into categories. They leave impressions instead, some gold, some dark, all permanent. Las Vegas survived him. It polished itself. Towers rose, carpet softened. Risk got packaged into loyalty tiers and quarterly reports. But there was a stretch of years when the city still carried the scent of dust and gun oil beneath the perfume. When a man in a cowboy hat could walk the floor of his casino and personally decide who played and who didn't. Benny Binion stood at that crossroads and ascended to be the house. And for a while, the house wore boots. If you wander Fremont Street and listen closely, you might still sense him in the quiet before sunrise. In the way old dealers talk about the good games and gay olden times. In the memory of smoke that no ventilation system ever fully erased. Legends of the felt won't ever disappear from Vegas's lore. No, men like Binion get carved into the desert sand for eternity. And somewhere beneath the corporate shine and digital billboards, there's still a table that remembers a man who accepted all wagers and expected you to mean it.